Alright guys, y'all absolutely killed the last video. I just want to thank everybody so much for subscribing to the channel, dropping likes, and leaving me some encouraging comments. So thank you. I'm going to continue to try to get y'all a video every single day, and I'm going to continue to try to bring on people that are smarter than me with fantasy baseball. That way they can give you a better idea, because I can come out here and I can talk about some trends that I am seeing. I can talk about some very basic things. But if we are going to get down to the smallest details, if we are going to go to very complex fantasy baseball strategy, I'm not going to be able to help you. While yes, I sleep, breathe, and eat fantasy sports for a living, that's all I do. Fantasy baseball is something that's a little bit more complicated. It's something that has different aspects, especially with certain statistics when we have such a large sample size that I'm not going to be able to fully grasp. I'm not going to be able to fully understand. So if there is anybody that you would like to see me bring on this channel, please go down to the comment section below and tell me their name, and I'll do my best to reach out to them and bring them on to ask them what they are thinking about the 2021 season. But that's it. What we are going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be going through and I'm going to be looking at the ADP from the early rounds of 2020 fantasy baseball drafts and comparing it to 2021. And then we are going to be looking at 3 players that drastically increased their price between these 2 seasons. And then lastly, I'm going to be telling you if I think you should be targeting them or avoiding them in your drafts based on if their rise was justified. But as always, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And our first player that we are going to talk about is currently going number 3 overall in high stakes drafts right now. And this is Fernando Tatis Jr. And yes, he just signed a ridiculous $300+ million contract for the Padres. Last offseason, he was getting drafted at 19 overall. So if we understand the opportunity cost that you are seeing with a top 3 draft pick versus a pick at the very back half of the second round, this is a massive increase in value with your expected output of the pick that you were investing. And Fernando Tatis Jr., honestly, I think is worth it. I'm going to go straight to the meat of the video. And here we know that he is 22 years old, extremely young. So a lot of this evaluation is projecting that he's going to be able to continue to develop his overall game. But he is playing in quite possibly one of the best lineups in Major League Baseball for the Padres currently. And if we go through, it sucks to say, and I know that this kind of goes against everything that I've been saying in the videos as of late, but really, we can't look at any given season for Tatis Jr. and say that we have a large sample size of who we think he is. Because in 2019, while yes, we should have had that massive sample size, we know that he's a younger player. We know that we are not going to be able to see those 500+ major league at-bats. We actually got 334 of them, but at 20 years old, he was able to go out there and completely dominate with a .317 batting average, a .379 on base percentage, and a .590 slugging. So this tells us that he can get on base, he can hit for power, and on top of that, I forgot to mention the fact that he is going out there and also giving you a significant amount of stolen bases. And for those rotisserie leagues, based on everybody coming on talking on the channel, y'all already know this, but those stolen bases are going to be a category that is so hard to find. And if we look at what he did in 2020, while yes, the numbers are slightly lower, we know that the 2020 season was something that ultimately I don't want to be putting too much weight in, where we only got 224 at-bats, where we saw a 277 batting average, 366 on base percentage, and a 571 slugging. But we know the stolen bases are going to be there, and if the Padres are willing to go out there and give him $340 million, I think that we can confidently project him to continue to develop just every part of his game as he goes into his age 22, age 23 season. So I think if you're drafting him in the top 5, that is completely justified, especially for those rotisserie leagues where stolen bases are going to be hard to come by. All right, so now a player that we've talked about so much this offseason already, but he fits the mold perfectly for this video, is going to be the third baseman on that same Padres team. And this is Manny Machado. Okay, so with Manny Machado, yes, he is currently in his prime, but he's at the point where we don't know if we can continue to say that we can safely project him to develop his game. He's 28 years old, something that we just want to keep in the back of our minds. And last offseason, he was being drafted at 43 overall compared to this year where he's going at the beginning to the middle of the second round, depending on how many teams are in your league. And this is something that I can't get behind. Now, I know I've talked about this multiple times. I know that we've had other people like Michael and Aaron coming on to talk about Manny Machado as well. So maybe y'all are tired of hearing it, but I don't care. I want to hammer this home to make sure that y'all are avoiding him in the second round of your fantasy baseball drafts. Unless you're playing in a 12-man league and he falls to the very end of the second, then I think you can justify making that selection. But I'm seeing a lot of high-stakes drafts where he's going mid-second based on how hard it is to find that consistent third base production. But if we go back and if we look at his 2020 season, I think that this is not something that we can project onto the next year, where with 250 plate appearances, he had a batting average over 300, his on-base percentage was 370, and he had a 580 slugging. But if we go to 2019, where we actually have a large sample of him while he's still in his prime, he had 661 plate appearances. His average dips all the way down to 256, on base percentage at 334, slugging 462. He did have 32 homers, 5 stolen bases. That is something that I need to point out. But still, I mean, I am not going to be willing to make a second round investment, even if it's at the third base position, even if he's playing in one of the best lineups in baseball, if we are going to be expecting something closer to 2019 rather than what he gave us in 2020. All right, so now our next player is going to be very similar to Fernando Tatis Jr., where he's extremely young. A lot of his draft ADP is baked into the fact that we are having him progress for this next season. And this is going to be Beau Bastet, and right now, 22 years old for the Blue Jays. He's playing shortstop. And if we go through and look at where he was being drafted in 2020, while he was still pretty much just a project coming up from AAA, he was drafted at the 58th spot overall, and in 2019, he's jumped up to the 19th spot overall, so you're going to be spending a late second, early third if you're wanting to add him to your roster. And I know, very similar to Fernando Tatis Jr., it's going to be hard for us to go out there and say with any certainty what we actually are expecting, just because the sample sizes that we have are very small, where in 2019, he had about 200 plate appearances, and in 2020, he had about 150, but in both seasons, he had over a 300 batting average, and we know he was extremely young. This is a player that is only going to get better. His on-base percentage in 2019 was 358. In 2020, it was 330. His slugging in 2019 was 571, and in 2020, it was 512. But this is also a player that has speed. This is also a player that can give you stolen bases. So if he falls to the early third round for you and you decided to pass up on a Fernando Tatis Jr. with your first overall pick, I think that we could actually say Beau here could represent a value if you are willing to go out there and just naturally assume that he is going to progress as he ages. All right, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out so much, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.